Rain hammered the glass that morning, but inside the diner, the storm had already begun. "Listen to me, you useless little nobody," the manager hissed, his voice sharp enough to slice through the hum of the coffee machine. "You think feeding that filthy kid makes you a saint? You're just a broke waitress who can't mind her own business. Keep this up and I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Spit hit Clara's cheek as he shouted.
She didn't flinch.
She just stood there, hands trembling at her sides, a cracked coffee cup between them. The other waitresses stayed silent. They looked away, pretending not to see. That was yesterday. Today the world shook.
The same diner.
The same coffee cup. But this time, it shattered against the floor as the windows rattled like thunder. Outside, a military helicopter descended, its blades tearing the air. Black, massive, landing right in the parking lot. Clara froze. Through the storm of dust, she saw him, the boy. The same thin, quiet child she'd been feeding in secret for months. But he wasn't the starving, frightened child she remembered. He walked calmly beside a man in a dark suit, eyes steady, expression unreadable. And then he looked up at her. He smiled. He waved, like an old friend greeting her after years apart. Her hands went numb. The entire diner stood still. Who was this boy? And why had a military helicopter come for him? To understand that moment, the wave, the storm, the secret, you have to go back. Back 3 months before the helicopter touched the ground. The smell of burnt coffee and old grease filled Maggie's diner, a small roadside stop in Pine Hollow, a forgotten town where the loudest sound was the hum of neon and the rustle of truck tires on wet asphalt. Clara Reed wiped the same counter she'd been cleaning for 15 years. Every day, 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. $5 an hour plus tips. Most days she left with 60. On good days, maybe 80. But it wasn't about the money. It was about being invisible. And invisible was exactly what Clara needed. Nobody asked who she was before. Nobody wondered why she lived alone. They didn't know that 15 years ago she wasn't a waitress at all. Once she had been one of the brightest codebreakers the National Data Security Bureau had ever trained. She could see patterns where others saw chaos. Numbers and symbols spoke to her like language. By 25, she held top clearance. By 27, she was offered a covert position overseas. A man in a gray suit had come to her desk one morning. "Miss Reed," he said, "your country needs you. This work saves lives." He offered her more than she'd ever dreamed of, 6 figures, prestige, purpose. But Clara didn't even look at the papers. Her eyes drifted to the small photo taped beside her monitor. Ben, her 8-year-old son, grinning with a missing front tooth, holding a baseball mitt too big for his hands. "I can't," she said softly. "My son needs me here." The man's smile vanished. "You might regret that decision." Clara had looked him straight in the eye. "I doubt it. I'm his mother." "That's what matters most." He'd paused at the door. "We'll see." 3 months later, Ben got sick. At first it was headaches. Then came the seizures, hospitals, tests, words no parent should ever have to hear. A rare degenerative neurological disorder, fatal without treatment. But there was a drug, experimental, restricted, not available to civilians. She remembered the phone call like it was burned into her skin. "Miss Reed," the same man's voice said. Calm, polite, terrible. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. My son needs the medication," she pleaded. "I'll sign whatever you want. I'll work for you, please." A pause. Then, "I'm sorry. The trial is limited to families of active personnel. You declined our offer. You don't qualify." "He's 8 years old," she whispered. "He's dying." "I understand this is difficult," he said. "Good luck, Miss Reed." The line went dead. 4 weeks later, Ben was gone. She'd held his hand through every seizure, every breath, every whispered, "I love you." And in the end, as his body failed him, he'd smiled one last time. "It's okay, Mom," he'd whispered. "You stayed. That's what matters." After the funeral, Clara packed what little she owned, left the city, and vanished into Pine Hollow. 15 years passed. 15 years of quiet routine, of surviving but not living. She thought she'd buried everything, her grief, her guilt, her past. But that was before the boy showed up. It happened on a Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Clara was closing up when she saw him standing on the sidewalk outside. A boy, maybe 10 years old. Thin as paper, clothes hanging loose, hair dirty, eyes hollow. He didn't move. Didn't beg. just stood there staring at the leftover pie through the glass. Something in her chest cracked. She didn't think. She grabbed a takeout box, filled it with pie and a sandwich, added a bottle of water. Then she slipped out through the back door. The boy was already waiting in the alley, like he knew she'd come. "Here," she said gently. "It's yours. No strings." He hesitated, watching her with those strange gray eyes. "It's okay," she said. "No one's watching." Slowly he reached for the box, opened it, and began to eat. Fast, desperate, silent. She turned away to give him space. And that's when she saw it. At the base of his skull, just under the hairline, was a scar. Small, precise, surgical. Her breath froze. She knew that scar. She'd seen it once before in a classified facility 15 years ago, on the head of another child. The doctor giving the tour had called it neural enhancement surgery. "Think of it as progress," he'd said. "We're not breaking minds anymore. We're improving them." She'd walked out of that facility sick to her stomach now. Years later, that same scar was staring back at her. The boy finished eating and looked up, crumbs on his lips. "Thank you," he whispered. And then he was gone. But the image of that scar followed her home. That night, as rain tapped against her window, Clara sat at her kitchen table staring into the dark. She didn't know it yet, but the moment she fed that boy, her quiet life was over. Because that scar meant only one thing: someone had found her, and they weren't finished with what she'd started 15 years ago. The next day, Clara woke before sunrise. The sky was still dark, the air heavy with fog. She hadn't slept a minute. The boy's face, that scar, those things had dug their way into her thoughts like roots that refused to loosen. At the diner, she tried to focus on the usual rhythm: coffee, plates, tips. The clatter of forks and tired laughter from truckers who didn't care what day it was. But every sound felt distant, blurred, as if the world was slightly out of sync. Around 1 in the afternoon, she caught herself glancing at the clock every few seconds. She told herself she wasn't waiting, but when the minute hand hit 2, she was already in the alley. The boy was there again. Same spot, same hollow eyes. He looked less scared this time. But there was something older in his stare. Something that didn't belong in a 10-year-old. "I didn't think you'd come back," Clara said. "I didn't think you'd feed me again," he replied. Voice quiet, steady. She smiled softly. "I'm Clara." He hesitated, like he had to check if it was safe to answer. "Leo. Do you live nearby, Leo?" No answer. He lowered his gaze, chewing on the crust of the sandwich she'd brought. Clara didn't push. She knew the sound of silence that came from fear. From that day, it became a rhythm. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Leo appeared at 2 o'clock sharp. Clara brought food, and he accepted it with quiet gratitude. Sometimes he said thank you, sometimes not. But he always came back. And each time she noticed something new. One afternoon, his sleeve slipped, revealing a thin metal bracelet around his wrist. The surface was engraved with a number. 17, what's that? She asked gently. Leo froze. His hand snapped down, pulling his sleeve over it. Nothing, he muttered. It's just nothing. Then he ran off before she could say another word. That night, Clara couldn't shake the image. A numbered bracelet, a scar at the base of his skull. She'd seen both before, 15 years ago, inside a lab she had never spoken about again. She remembered the man who gave her the tour. The same one who'd offered her that job. His words echoed now like a whisper from the past. These children are special, Miss Reed, extraordinary. Their memories don't fade. Their minds never stop calculating. They can see patterns faster than any computer. He had smiled then with that cold clinical pride. Think of it as evolution. She had called it something else monstrous. The next time Leo came, Clara watched him closely. The way his eyes darted around before sitting. The way he never stayed longer than 5 minutes. The way he seemed to memorize every detail around him. The walls, the exits, the time on her wristwatch. This wasn't random fear. It was training. One Thursday, Leo reached into the takeout box and pulled out a napkin. A pen had accidentally fallen inside. Without hesitation, he began to draw. Not pictures, symbols, numbers. Clara's heart stopped. They weren't doodles. They were encryption codes. The same kind she used to write at the bureau 15 years ago. Where did you learn that? She whispered. Leo didn't look up. I didn't learn it, I just know it. He folded the napkin carefully and pushed it toward her. Then he stood and left. Clara opened it with trembling hands. Her breath caught. The symbols were accurate, advanced, government-grade encryption. And beneath them, written in neat block letters, "They're watching you." She looked toward the end of the alley. A black car sat there. Dark windows. Engine idling. The moment her eyes met it, the car pulled away slowly, deliberately. It wasn't hiding. It was a warning. That night, Clara sat by her window again. The napkin lay on the table beside her, her coffee gone cold. Across the street, a small red light blinked on a telephone pole, tiny, steady, mechanical. A camera. Her stomach twisted. Someone had found her, not just watching the boy, watching her. The next day, the same car returned, parked in the same spot. Different driver, same tinted glass. And the camera? Now there were two. By the end of the week, there were four. One at the library, one near her apartment, one above the diner's door. She told herself she was imagining it, but the truth was clear. She'd been invisible for 15 years. Now the world had turned its gaze back to her. When Leo came that afternoon, he looked different. Tense, alert. "They found you," Clara said quietly. He nodded. "They always do." "How long have they been following you?" "Always," he said again, voice barely a whisper. "They never stopped. I just got better at hiding. Then why come here?" "Why me?" Leo looked at her. His eyes were too old for his small face. "Because you're the only one who ever said no to them." Clara's breath caught. "How do you know that?" "Because I was told. You were the one who walked away." He turned, disappearing into the maze of alleys before she could respond. That night, Clara locked every door, every window, but sleep never came. By morning, the black car was back, and this time, someone stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a gray suit, with the kind of stillness that spoke of power. He entered the diner like a man walking into his own living room. "We're closed," Clara said. "I know," he replied calmly. "I'm not here for coffee." He sat at the counter. "My name is Agent Cole. I think you and I should talk." Clara didn't move. "I have nothing to say to you," he smiled faintly. "That's unfortunate. Because I have a great deal to say to you." He opened a folder and slid a photograph across the counter. Leo, standing in a hallway under bright white lights, wearing a gray uniform, eyes blank. "You've been feeding Subject 17, Cole said. "You've been helping him avoid recovery." "His name is Leo," Clara snapped. Cole's expression didn't change. "He's an asset, a part of a classified initiative, and he's been missing for months. He's a child. He's both." Clara's hands trembled. "You're torturing him," Cole shook his head. "We don't torture, we train. We teach them to use their gifts. You give them numbers instead of names, for their safety. You cut into their brains, for their improvement." Cole leaned closer, voice steady. "Miss Reed, you were one of us once. You know what's at stake. We're trying to create a generation that can think faster than the threats we face. You could help us again?" "I'll never work for you," she said. "Then perhaps you'll reconsider when you understand what's at risk." He slid another photo forward. A boy, older, dark-haired, wearing the same uniform as Leo, the number 8 engraved on his bracelet. "Who is this?" Clara asked. "Daniel," Cole said quietly. "He was my responsibility." "Subject 8, what happened to him?" Cole's jaw tightened. "He died 2 years ago. A mission gone wrong. You sent him to die. I did, and I've been trying to live with that ever since." For the first time, Clara saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret. Cole stood and placed a card on the counter. "Leo's situation is unstable. If we don't recover him in 72 hours, a containment protocol activates." "What protocol?" "Memory reset. Complete erasure," Clara's voice cracked. "You'd wipe his mind? He'd forget everything, everyone, including you." The words hit like a punch. "You have 72 hours, Miss Reed. After that, Leo ceases to exist as you know him." He turned and walked to the door. "Think carefully before deciding who you want to save." The bell above the door rang once and then he was gone. Clara stared at the card. Just a phone number. 10 digits. Nothing else. 72 hours. 3 days to decide whether to save the boy or stay hidden forever. The clock above the counter ticked once. Then again. She picked up the card with shaking hands. The moment she did, the lights in the diner flickered. Someone was watching her decide. Clara didn't sleep that night. The card lay on the table beside her, glowing faintly under the kitchen light. 10 numbers. That was all. But those numbers held a decision that could rewrite a child's life or erase it. She replayed everything in her mind. From the first day Leo appeared to the look in Agent Cole's eyes when he spoke of the protocol. He hadn't lied about one thing, the pain of loss. She recognized it. It was the same hollow ache that had lived inside her since Ben died. By dawn, Clara made her choice. She wasn't calling Cole. She wouldn't hand Leo back to the same people who turned children into experiments. She would find him first. The town was still half asleep when she stepped outside. A gray morning mist rolled through Pine Hollow, softening the edges of the buildings. She walked fast, coat pulled tight, head down. Every sound felt louder than it should. The hum of an engine, the creak of a sign, the faint, rhythmic click of footsteps that didn't belong to hers. She reached the old industrial district, the part of town people forgot existed. Rusted metal, broken windows, and silence thick enough to make your ears ring. And there, inside an abandoned warehouse, she found him. Leo sat on an old crate in a beam of weak sunlight, as if he'd been waiting all along. "How did you know I'd come?" Clara asked. He didn't look surprised. "Because you always do." She set down the bag she carried, food, water, clean clothes, and crouched beside him. "We need to talk," he nodded slowly. "I know. They sent Cole to you." Clara froze. "How do you know that?" "Because that's what they always do," Leo said. His voice was calm, but his hands twisted the hem of his sleeve. "First surveillance, then the warning, then the offer." "What offer?" He lifted his gaze. "To make you part of them again." Her stomach turned. "You ran from them, didn't you? Why?" Leo hesitated, then spoke so softly she had to lean closer to hear. "Because I said no." "No to what?" "They wanted me to break a system. A firewall that protects medical data. They said it was for security, but it wasn't. It would have hurt people. A lot of people. So I refused. And then they told me I'd be reset." Clara's heart pounded. "The memory wipe?" He nodded. "They call it Phoenix. They say it's mercy. That when you start over, you stop feeling fear. But that's the lie. The fear doesn't go away. It just gets buried." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black device, smooth and featureless except for a red blinking light. "They're tracking me through this." Clara's voice trembled. "Then why bring it with you?" He looked at her, eyes full of guilt. "Because I didn't run away. They let me." She stared at him. "What do you mean?" "They wanted me to find you. It was the test. They called it the morality trial. They said if you helped me, they'd know you still had your conscience. That you still couldn't be bought." The air left her lungs. "You used me?" Tears filled his eyes. "I didn't want to. But they said if I didn't do what they asked, they'd start Phoenix early." He set the device on the ground between them. The red light blinked faster now, a heartbeat in plastic. "My father designed it," Leo whispered. "General Marcus. He runs the program." Clara's eyes widened. She remembered that name. The man who oversaw the Neural Intelligence Division. The one who'd called the children assets. "Your father did this to you?" "He said he was saving me," Leo said. His voice cracked. "He said this way I'd never be weak." Clara felt something break inside her. "You're not weak. You're human." Leo blinked fast, like the word was something he hadn't heard in a long time. "There's more," he said, pulling out a small flash drive. "This has everything. Files. Proof of what they've done, every experiment, every name, every mission. If you send it out, the whole program collapses. The other children go free. Even my mom." Clara stared at the drive. "Then why haven't you done it yourself?" "Because no one would believe me." "But they'd believe you." "Why?" "Because you were one of them. Because you walked away." Clara held the drive in her hand. It was so small, but it felt heavier than a gun. "And if I expose them," she said quietly, "what happens to you?" "They erase me anyway." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because if the world knows, I become evidence." His words hit like a blade. "So either I save you," she whispered, "or I save everyone else." Leo nodded. "You have 56 hours." He stepped closer. His voice trembled now. "Please, do something, anything, don't let them win." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Clara," he said softly. "Everything they told me to fake, the hunger, the fear, it was real. You were the first person who ever saw me, not a subject. The first person who called me by my name. And then he was gone. Clara stood there in the empty warehouse, the flash drive burning in her hand. 56 hours. That was all. That night, she booted up her old encrypted laptop, the one she hadn't touched since the bureau. The screen came alive with a faint blue glow. She inserted the drive, a single file appeared. Not documents, not data. A video. Her breath caught. She clicked it. The screen flickered, then showed a hospital room. Machines beeping softly. A child lying in bed, pale and small. Her world stopped. "Hi, Mom," said a voice she hadn't heard in 15 years. It was Ben. Clara's knees gave out. She clutched the desk, shaking as her son's face filled the screen. "If you're watching this," he said weakly, "I guess I'm gone. But I want you to know something." He smiled. Crooked, tired, perfect. "You made the right choice. You stayed. You chose me." Tears streamed down her face. "You didn't fail me, Mom. You gave me everything. Don't let anyone make you think love was a mistake." The video ended in a quiet hum. Clara sat frozen in the dark, every breath a wound. The flash drive still glowed faintly in the port. There was no proof. No evidence. Just her son's goodbye, weaponized to break her. She didn't hear the knock on the window until it came again. Leo was there. Rain soaked his hair. His face was pale, eyes full of sorrow. "You watched it," he said softly. "You lied to me," Clara whispered. "There's no proof. Just this, I know. Why? Because that's the real test." He sank to the floor, voice cracking. "The video is closure. Something my father knew you needed. He kept it all these years, waiting for the moment you'd have to choose." Clara's tears turned to anger. "He used my son's memory to control me." "Yes," Leo whispered. "And now he wants to see what you'll do. Keep the video and I go back. Give it up and he sets me free." She shook her head. "That's not a choice. It's the only one he believes in," Leo said. "He wants to know if you'll sacrifice your own healing for someone else's freedom." He climbed onto the fire escape. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. The same place. Bring the drive if you choose me." Clara reached out. "Leo, wait," but he was already gone. She stood alone in the silence. Her son's voice still echoed through her mind. "You chose me." Now she would have to choose again, this time between the past that kept her alive and the boy who still could be. The clock on the wall ticked once, then twice. 54 hours left, and somewhere in the dark she heard the faint whir of a helicopter's blades turning. The next day the rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low, heavy and unmoving. The kind of sky that promised no comfort, only waiting. Clara sat in the diner long after closing, the neon sign flickering above the window, her reflection split by the cracks in the glass. The flash drive lay on the counter. A tiny, lifeless piece of metal that somehow held everything. Her son's last words, her grief, and the impossible choice that was tightening around her like a noose. At 1:55, she stood. She slid the drive into her pocket, grabbed her coat, and walked out the back door toward the warehouse. The streets were empty. Not silent. Nothing was truly silent, but still enough that she could hear her heartbeat. When she reached the building, a low vibration filled the air, a deep rhythmic pulse that grew louder. She looked up. A black helicopter cut through the clouds, descending toward the open lot beside the warehouse. Dust and grit swirled in thick spirals as it landed, and the sound swallowed everything else. The door opened. Leo stepped out first. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He walked beside a tall man in a dark uniform trimmed with silver, a general's insignia glinting under the weak light. His presence was enormous, the kind that carried both authority and guilt. He looked straight at her. Clara felt her pulse jump. Marcus, the man who had built the program, the man who had turned his own son into an experiment. He and Leo approached slowly, boots crunching on gravel. When they reached her, the general stopped a few feet away. "Miss Reed," he said. His voice was deep, calm, almost gentle. "Thank you for meeting us." Clara didn't answer. Marcus scanned the warehouse interior before speaking again. "I prefer to talk where there are no walls listening." "You're his father," she said. "Yes." "You gave your child to a laboratory." "I gave him a future." "No," she said. "You gave him chains." Marcus's eyes hardened for a moment, but then something in him faltered. When my wife died, Leo was only 4. I didn't know how to raise a child. I knew war, not love. The program promised to give him what I couldn't. You gave him numbers instead of memories. Marcus's jaw tightened, and I regret that every day. He glanced down at Leo. 3 months ago, he asked me if I loved him. I couldn't answer. I'd spent so long commanding soldiers that I forgot how to speak as a father. He looked back at Clara. That's when I realized what I'd become. So I designed a test? A test? She repeated, to see if humanity could still exist inside the system I created, to see if someone like you would choose compassion over obedience. She stepped closer. And if I failed? Then he would go back to being Subject 17, and I would know that the world had finally gone cold. Clara's voice shook. You used your own son to prove a point. Marcus's expression flickered, pain moving beneath the control. I needed to know if redemption was possible. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tablet device. You've seen the video, he said. Clara froze. You recorded my son? I didn't, Marcus said quickly. The Bureau did. Every patient in those classified trials was documented. I recovered it when the files were archived. I knew one day it would matter. You used it to break me. I used it to remind you of who you were. She glared at him. And who is that? A tool for your experiments? A mother who lost everything because of people like you? No, he said quietly. The only person who ever said no to me. He set the tablet on a nearby crate. The flash drive in your pocket holds 2 things. The video you saw and a second encrypted file, proof of the program. Names, dates, projects, everything. You can release it to the world and destroy the entire operation overnight. Why are you telling me this? Because if you do, Phoenix Protocol activates automatically. Every child in the program is erased. Leo included. Clara's throat tightened. So you're saying I can't save him? I'm saying you have 2 paths, Marcus replied. Expose us and the truth lives while the children die. Keep the evidence and I'll dismantle the program from the inside. Slowly. Safely. I'll release the children one by one. But Leo stays with me. No more experiments. No more resets. You expect me to trust you? I expect you to decide what kind of world you want to live in. Leo stepped forward. Mom. He stopped, corrected himself, his voice trembling. Clara, I want to remember you. I want a life outside this. But I don't want the others to die. His words sliced through her. Marcus looked between them. If you choose silence, I'll resign my position today. I'll take the blame. The project will end in shadow, not in fire. And if I refuse, then Phoenix begins. In 48 hours, he turned toward Leo. Stay with her. Think carefully before you decide. He walked toward the helicopter. The blades started again, the wind cutting through the air like a scream. Before stepping inside, he looked back once. For what it's worth, he said. I'm sorry. The helicopter lifted off and vanished into the clouds, leaving only the echo of its rotors. When the dust settled, Clara and Leo were alone. He gave you an impossible choice, Leo said quietly. Clara stared at the ground. That's all he's ever given anyone. What are you going to do? She didn't answer. Not right away. Her hand went to her pocket, feeling the cold edge of the flash drive. There had to be another way, something he hadn't seen, something he hadn't calculated. That night, back at her apartment, she laid everything on the table, the flash drive, the tablet, a notepad full of equations and access codes she'd memorized years ago. Leo sat across from her, watching silently. You have an idea, he said finally. I might, she replied. Morris said publishing the files triggers the protocol. But what if we don't publish them? What if we use them? Leo frowned. Use them how? As leverage. You mean blackmail him? I mean negotiate, she said. He wants redemption. He wants to prove he can be better. I give him that chance, but on my terms. Leo shook his head. He won't agree. He will, Clara said, her voice hardening. Because this time he isn't holding the power. I am. She picked up her phone and dialed the number on Cole's card. When he answered, she said, Tell the general I want a meeting, tomorrow, noon, same place. Has a decision been made? He asked. Yes, she said, but not the one he's expecting. She hung up. Leo looked at her, a mix of fear and hope in his eyes. What if he doesn't come? Clara met his gaze. He will, because people like him always come when they think they can still win. She sat back, eyes on the window. as the night swallowed the last traces of light. For the first time in 15 years, she wasn't just surviving. She was preparing to fight. The next day would decide everything, the program, the children, and the future of the boy she refused to lose. By noon the next day, the air over the warehouse was still and sharp, as if the wind itself was waiting. Clara arrived early. She stood in the wide, empty space surrounded by broken windows and beams of white light that cut through the dust. The flash drive felt heavy in her pocket, heavier than ever. When the helicopter sound reached her, she didn't flinch. The machine came down smoothly, as though it already knew where to land. Marcus stepped out first, followed by Agent Cole. Both men were dressed in black suits now, not uniforms. Their eyes were hidden behind dark lenses that reflected the warehouse like glass. "Miss Reed," Marcus said, his voice calm but strained. "You asked for this meeting. We're here. What's your decision?" Clara's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "You wanted me to choose between truth and mercy." "I'm not choosing either. I'm choosing power," Cole frowned. "Power?" "Yes," she said, pulling the flash drive from her pocket. "This isn't a weapon or evidence. It's leverage. You want reform, General? You'll get it, but not on your terms." Marcus took a slow breath. "Explain. I keep the drive. I don't publish it and I don't give it to you. I become an independent overseer. Outside the Bureau, outside your control. I get full access to the program. Every facility, every subject, every operation. I decide which missions go forward and which don't. And I have the authority to shut the entire project down if I see abuse." Cole blinked. "That's absurd. You'd have more authority than the director himself." "That's the point," she said quietly. Marcus studied her, face unreadable, and in exchange, Leo goes free. No tracking, no monitoring, no reset. He becomes a child again. You see him once a month under supervision. You learn to be his father instead of his commanding officer. Cole stepped forward, shaking his head. "General, this is madness. She's threatening national security." Marcus didn't move. "What about the others?" he asked. "The other children get psychological evaluations. If they want out, they leave. If they want to stay, it's voluntary. No more numbers. No more implants. They get names." Cole turned to Marcus. "Sir, we can't." Marcus held up a hand. "Enough." Silence filled the space, thick and electric. Finally, Marcus looked at Clara. "And if I refuse?" "Then I release everything. The program collapses and the world learns what you've done to children." Cole's voice rose. "You're bluffing." Clara met his gaze. "Try me." For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the helicopter blades idling outside. Then Marcus exhaled, long and slow. "You'll have it," he said. "Your oversight. Your power. But one condition, Agent Cole stays." "What for?" "Accountability," Marcus replied. "He failed one child before. He'll spend the rest of his life finding the others who went missing." Cole's face turned pale. "Sir, you can't mean—" "I do," Marcus said quietly. "This is your redemption." Cole swallowed hard and nodded. "Understood." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled off his insignia pin. He stared at it for a moment, then set it on the crate beside him. "I'm done as general. Effective immediately. You said I needed to be a father. Maybe it's time I learn how." For a second, Clara didn't know what to say. The man who once commanded a secret army was standing before her, stripped of everything: rank, uniform, and certainty. Leo stepped forward cautiously. "Does this mean I'm free?" Marcus's voice softened. "Yes, son. You're free." The words hung in the air, fragile but real. Clara felt her chest tighten. After all the lies, all the fear, those two words felt like the first true thing spoken in years. "Then we have a deal," she said. Marcus extended his hand. Clara hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, but there was no power in it, only exhaustion and something like hope. A low rumble echoed outside. "Another helicopter, reinforcements?" Clara asked. Marcus shook his head. "No, something better." The doors of the aircraft opened. One by one, children stepped out. 9 of them. They were thin, pale, blinking in the light like they'd forgotten what sunlight felt like. Some clutched each other's hands. Others just stood, dazed, as if freedom were a language they'd never learned. Leo's eyes widened. "You found them," Marcus nodded. "The evaluation teams worked through the night. 9 wanted out. 9 are getting out." Clara's breath caught when a girl, maybe 12, stepped forward. She wore a small metal bracelet etched with the number 7. When she saw Leo, her face broke into a trembling smile. "Leo," she cried. She ran to him, arms wrapping around him so tightly it looked like she feared he might vanish. He froze for a second, then hugged her back. It was awkward, stiff, then real. The sound that came from her chest was half sob, half laugh. Clara turned away for a moment, blinking hard. Marcus stepped beside her. "They'll need homes," he said. "Families. Real lives. I'll make sure they get that." "You'd better," she said quietly. He nodded. "I will." Then he crouched in front of Leo. "I don't expect forgiveness," Marcus said, "but I want you to know I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make things right." Leo didn't speak. His small hands twisted in his sleeves. Then slowly he nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Cole turned toward the open doors. "I'll start looking for the others," he said. "How many are still missing?" Clara asked. "3," Marcus replied. Cole met her eyes. "I'll bring them home." "Whatever it takes," he turned to Marcus. "When I find them, I'm done. No more programs. No more silence," Marcus nodded. "Then go." Cole walked to the waiting car parked at the edge of the lot. Before getting in, he looked back once at Clara and Leo. "Good luck," he said simply. Then he was gone. The remaining children gathered near the warehouse, standing in a loose cluster of confusion and hope. For the first time in their lives, they didn't have orders. They just had each other. Clara stood beside Marcus, watching them. The afternoon light spilled through the clouds, soft and gold, touching their faces like a blessing. "Maybe this is a start," Marcus said quietly. "It's more than that," she replied. "It's proof we're not lost yet." Leo slipped his hand into hers. His fingers were cold, small, but steady. "Thank you," he whispered. She looked down at him. "For what?" "For not giving up." Marcus turned to the children and began speaking to them gently, awkwardly, like a man relearning how to be human. Clara watched, the flash drive still in her pocket. It held her son's voice. His forgiveness. And now the evidence that would hold Marcus accountable forever. She'd found a way to win. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. For the first time in 15 years, she felt like she could breathe. The sun broke through the clouds then, washing the warehouse in pale light. It wasn't salvation, but it was hope, and hope was enough to keep going. 6 months later, the diner opened at 6 just like it always had. The coffee still burned on the edges, the counter still squeaked beneath her rag, and the same old neon light still buzzed in the corner window. But something had changed. Clara no longer moved through her shifts like a ghost. Her hands no longer shook when she poured coffee. Her eyes no longer searched for threats behind the glass. Because now, when she turned around, she saw Leo sitting at the counter after school, pencil in hand, doing homework. He laughed sometimes. It was small, cautious laughter, but real, the kind that made her chest ache in the best way. Every day at 4 o'clock, Marcus arrived to pick him up. No uniform now, no badges or medals, just jeans, flannel, and tired eyes that looked softer than before. He'd sit at the counter for a while, talk to Leo about fishing or baseball, or things fathers are supposed to talk about. He was learning how to be human again, one mistake at a time. The program didn't vanish. It couldn't, not entirely, but it had changed. Clara made sure of it. She now worked inside it, but not under it. She was the chief independent oversight officer, the one person no one could overrule. Every mission, every experiment, every child, it all crossed her desk. 9 children had been freed. 9 were safe, reintegrated, learning how to be kids instead of assets. 3 were still missing. Their faces hung on the wall above her desk, small photos pinned in a neat row. She looked at them every morning before work and every night before she went home. A reminder that her job wasn't finished. Agent Cole never came back. 2 months after the agreement, she received a postcard. No return address, no signature. Just 5 words scrawled in black ink. Still searching. Don't give up. Clara had read it a dozen times. She never threw it away. One morning, a file landed on her desk. Thin, white, stamped in red, mission proposal. Subject 22. She opened it. A girl, 12 years old. Dark hair. Small, bright eyes that looked too much like Ben's. The mission was labeled high risk, high value. Success could save 100 lives. Failure could cost one. Her hand hovered over the approval stamp. Leo was at school. The office was quiet. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass. She read the details again. The numbers were clean, the logic perfect. But her stomach twisted. This was the choice all over again. Save many or save one. Her eyes went to the photos on the wall. 3 missing children, still out there, still waiting. She thought of Leo, of his soft voice asking her once, "How do you know what's right when every choice hurts someone?" She'd told him then that right and wrong weren't lines, they were weights. You didn't follow them. You carried them. Now she understood what that meant, her thumb pressed against the handle of the stamp. Approve. Deny. The difference between the two felt thinner than paper. In her mind, she heard her son's voice, the same gentle tone from the old video, the one she still couldn't delete. You chose right, Mom. But what was right now? She closed her eyes. She saw Ben's face, then Leo's. 2 children, one lost, one found, both asking her to be brave. When she opened her eyes, she knew what to do. Her hand moved. The stamp came down hard. Ink met paper with a single heavy sound. The words glared up at her in bold red letters. Denied. Clara exhaled, long and deep. The decision wouldn't save everyone. It might even cost lives, but it would save this one, and for now that was enough. She gathered the file, slid it into the rejection pile, and turned off her desk lamp. Outside, the sun had begun to sink gold and soft, painting the world in the kind of light that looked like forgiveness. Leo waited at the diner. When she walked through the door, he looked up and smiled. "How was work?" he asked. "Hard," she said, "but good." Marcus sat nearby sipping coffee, his face calm. "He got an A in math," he said proudly. Clara smiled. "Of course he did," Leo laughed. "You sound surprised." "I'm not," she said softly. "Not at all." They ate dinner together, quiet and warm, surrounded by the hum of clinking cups and quiet conversation. For the first time in years, the world didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt alive. Later that night, when the diner emptied and the neon sign buzzed its tired hum, Clara walked to the window. Across the street, the cameras were gone. The black cars had vanished. For once, there was no one watching. Just her reflection in the glass, older, lined, but peaceful. Behind her, Leo yawned. "I'm tired," he said. "Go on," she said. "Your dad's waiting." He walked to the door, then stopped. "Clara, yes? Do you think we're safe now?" She smiled, though her eyes were wet. "Not safe," she said, "but free." He nodded and left with Marcus into the cool night air. Clara turned off the lights one by one until the diner was swallowed by shadows. She stood there a moment longer, hand resting on the counter she'd cleaned for 15 years. It was no longer the place she hid from her past. It was the place she rebuilt from it. Outside, a small breeze stirred the leaves on the street. In the distance, thunder rolled, soft, distant, familiar. She smiled faintly. Some storms don't destroy. They cleanse, and somewhere beyond the dark horizon, she imagined 3 lost children hearing the same thunder, waiting for someone to find them. Tomorrow, she would start again, because saving one life wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The lights of the diner blinked off. The town fell silent, and in that silence, somewhere in the memory of a boy's laughter and a mother's promise, something finally healed.